Great. All right. Well, folks, if I may, just to begin with, I'd like to start by welcoming you all to this event. Just before we start too much, I'd like to say, if you don't mind going on to mute, if at all you have any background noise, that would be great. We'll have some opportunities for questions throughout, and we'll ask them to, at certain times, to either then unmute yourself and ask questions, or equally, you can put them into the chat function and we can get to them as we need to. All right, wonderful. So if I may, welcome to Journey to Conscious Leadership. This is the beginning of a series of events that we're going to be holding, which is really exciting. We'll set a bit of a scene in a moment, but first and foremost, we welcome you all to joining us on this to what will be an interactive, an interesting, thought-provoking, and an opportunity opening, I think, series of dialogues where we can learn about people, their journeys into conscious leadership, also the things that we as spectators can do to become a part of supporting them, their missions, and permeating that goodness that can happen through their causes. So to our slide deck, so here's a sense of what we're going to go through. I'll cover a little bit around myself. We'll do some scene setting around how this was first formed. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be exploring here. Very lightweight, it's an extremely large subject, and the great thing is that we have got plenty of time through multiple sessions that we'll hold to be able to explore that. And I'm really pleased that we're going to be able to do that through various forms. We've then got a couple of very good speakers. So our very own Dominique is going to speak alongside Esther from CHEN, the Conscious Enterprise Network. So if you're not familiar with them, you're going to learn a little bit about that. And there's plenty to explore through links that we'll make available. And then we have another guest speaker, for Howard Gunstock from Carbon Kapture, who is just an incredible mission to do some planetary good, which is an expression I've recently come across through him. So if you've learned anything from today, I encourage you to inherit that expression, planetary good. I think it's just a marvelous way to be thinking about it. And then we'll wrap up with various things, such as there'll be call to action with each of these. There are things in which you can learn about and other directions that we might go in, as well as open invitation. You know, we'll have a survey at the end so we can ask for feedback. And then you might see this as an opportunity whereby you can also be a part of one of our sessions and come and share your journey, your experiences along the way. Because the more fluid we are as a group, the more we'll learn amazing things from it. Okay? My name is Nathan Hallmark. I work for a company based in the UK, as you can tell. I work for a company that focuses on working with conscious companies and transformational people. In my own company, I get to speak and work with a lot of companies that either have a product or a service that can make an improvement in the world itself or an improvement in people. And so I'm very fortunate to be in a position where I get to liaise with some of the finest people that walk the earth. And part of that journey, it brought me into the company of Dominique, Esther, as well as Howard, also, I'm pleased to say. But I want to just take for a moment to speak a little bit about my journey, not a huge amount. In my own journey as a business professional, I started to notice my own attention moving away from not just my own personal advantage, but actually my awareness began to pivot a little bit. And I think that this is, to a degree, my journey into consciousness. And that is how I started to think about other people a little bit more, started to think about our planet. I started to think about some of the biggest challenges that we face as an entire collective. And as a result, I started looking for like-minded people, and a pretty reasonable Google search, I found CHEN, the Conscious Enterprise Network. And that's where I first started speaking with Dominique and Esther. Essentially, I started to find my tribe, which again, another great expression I love to work with, finding tribe, finding like-minded people. And in doing that, we realized there was something to give, there was something to share, but more importantly, there was something to learn and find. And that was to find other people that were like-minded. And so our approach here is quite simple. We want to bring people together that have an interest in learning the concept of how consciousness and the journey of consciousness into leadership can take various forms. And those forms also can be a part of a journey to share amongst others and be a part of something bigger than just ourselves. So exploring consciousness, that's all right, no problem. We can go to our next one if that's all right. So consciousness as a concept is extremely large. And I think it's really important that we retain an identity individually as to how we see it, how we explore it, how we use it, and how we understand it. But fundamentally, we can all agree that it's different for each of us because it's a journey. We're all going to adopt it at different places and at different times. And so when we think about consciousness, we think about truly the awareness of others, the awareness of our surroundings, surroundings. It might be the surroundings of an empty room. It might be the people that are around us, or it might just be our entire environment on this planet. The three core areas that I certainly think about when we consider where consciousness can have a role to play are illustrated here. So top right, the sense of, and I'll use my own journey where I was traversing, I was just operating a professional career, and then I started to be aware of the world around me. And my own personal journey of consciousness is like, how do I understand more about my role? How I can help and impact other people's lives, how I can be a part of something bigger, but also something better that can help solve some of our challenges. And so then that comes down into the individual. So the first and foremost, we begin with consciousness as an individual. How do I think about myself? How do I think about my world? How do I behave? How do I behave in and around others? And then you start to find your tribe, that middle one there. You'll find like-minded people, dare I say, the wonderful audience that collected here. And that is where we all get together and we all start to think about, what are we all doing? How do we fit into this? How do our journeys align? What can I learn that will help me resonate? How could I mentor and give back? How can I share ideas? And by doing this and working together, then we can permeate a sense of more global goodness across the entire planet, where we look at things like global consciousness, ascension, even how we traverse. We're all becoming more aware of what's going on in the world. And this is where the direction of consciousness will go, we suspect, but it must begin at the individual, as it did with me, and it probably did with many of you as well. So to summarize, I would say that the events that we're going to create here, these series of meetings we'll put together, we're going to look at people sharing their journeys of how they went through what they went through, why they're here today, and the missions that they're on, and we can learn and resonate with. And I just want to summarize this final piece, and that is that the theme that we'll look at within the speakers that will speak today will be, number one, where was that sort of aha moment, that first journey into consciousness? What sparked it? What was it that took place? Secondly, what did that create in you? What was your why? What did you find? What did you discover and then invent? What did you become a part of? Thirdly, where are you today? And we'll hear a couple of amazing stories around where that is and where people presently are. And then, of course, we look to the future. What does the future hold? And then there's going to be an individual or a collective element where we can share and be a part of some of these causes as well. So setting the scene, that's our piece on consciousness. I'm really pleased to be able to hand over to our Chen founders, Dominique and Esther, who are going to speak to us on what it's all about.
Yes, thank you very much, Nathan. Well, good morning or good evening. I think, we got people coming from all sides of the planet. So, it's really an international event. So I'm presenting myself. My name is Dominique Conterno, and I'm one of the co-founders of Conscious Enterprises Network, or CHAIN, as we call it. After spending years in management and technical roles, I wanted my life to take a new direction, align with my inner vision, a vision of a new world, a dream of a new humanity that lives in complete care and self-awareness, where war, famine, and other self-imposed calamities are no more. My inner vision and life experience, having worked for many years for major international corporations and government bodies, led me to co-create CHAIN. Many of you attending our gathering may wonder, what is CHAIN all about? Well, we are a community of conscious leaders who understand that humankind faces severe challenges. We are all embarked on a journey of self-discovery to grow our awareness and care for the world. We are also a human think tank where each one of us in our community has a voice that is used to share our journey, wisdom, and care to a world in distress. We are a community of individuals questioning life and what we are, our purpose, and why we are prisoners from outdated human beliefs, corrupted technological views, and other unsound political agendas. We are the emerging new men and women who are facing our inner flaws, and by doing so, working on constructing a new world. CHAIN started its life around just under 2 years ago. Our aim was to gather members from many different countries. We succeeded, and today we have members from all over the planet. Our membership also covers all aspects of the world human activities, such as business, academia, politics, and NGOs. And we're covering altogether around 30 different sectors. Being a conscious leader is foremost about being yourself, your true self, not a copycat of what society or others want you to be. Your activities then can be anything, but regardless of your jobs and levels of authorities, you are a conscious leader. Some of us started or are starting sustainable or humanitarian projects. There is no limit to what we want to do for humanity and our planet. How remarkable people can be when they are guided by their hearts to undertake sometimes what seems to be the impossible. To such people, the word impossible does not exist. Only opportunities to create new avenues to save life and nature. Tonight, for our first gathering, we have an extraordinary speaker, Gunstock, a man of vision who came up with a revolutionary concept for tackling the carbon challenge we have created for the last 150 years. A few days ago, when speaking to Howard, I could not stop thinking that our current approach for facing the carbon challenge is all wrong. And I'm glad that Howard is with us tonight to present himself, his conscious leadership journey, his message, and his work. We have many major planetary life threats that we can only address by using new original methods and technologies that promote different and constructive options instead of carrying on with inadequate solutions. As conscious leaders, we must listen and support such endeavors that will allow humanity to survive our current technological, political, and financial madness. As conscious leaders, have we got a choice? If any participants in this gathering have any authority to propagate the work of visionaries such as Howard, then I'm asking you, do you have a choice? For me, there is no choice. We have a duty to humankind to support such endeavor in any ways we can. So, thank you for joining us and be part of this gathering. I'm passing you back to Nathan. Thank you very much.
Just before we go to Nathan, though, I would like I would like to say hi to everybody who is here. I mean, we have already talked to so many of you, some of us, Ashok and Anatoly, and of course, my neighbor from Bristol, hey. But we know so many of you, we have talked to so many of you in deep conversations. And of course, this is also about us. So please unmute yourself, Ashok, Annette, Anatoly, anybody who wants to say hi or just wants to say what they expect from this event very shortly. We have a few more minutes before Howard is going to present. So we would like also your interaction.
Okay, hi to everyone. In fact, I'm just about maybe 6 months old in Chen. And when I discovered it, I shared my first reaction with Esther. And it was like homecoming, you know, because you suddenly discover a place where people think like you do, although your sphere of activity in life might have been totally different. So that's it. I have been into management all my life. And that is the only area I know a little bit about. So be very happy to be here actually. I don't want to take too much of the time because the speaker is waiting. Hi to everyone.
Yes, thank you, Ashok. And Ashok is an avid writer. He's been writing, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of a lot of blogs. You can find him in the internet, and he writes a lot about leadership and management and society. So when we met him, and we've been also collaborating with him in some articles and different projects. So it was very interesting because he's been working in Tata in India, which is one of the biggest companies, and so he has also brought a lot of learnings to us as well. So each one of you bring different perspectives and insights, and that is why we just meet here, not just to become better in what we do, but also to grow with each other and to care for the projects we care about, for our environment. And so now we are getting ready for Howard Gunstock, the Chief Kelper. So I'm going to pass over to Nathan. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Esther. And welcome everyone once again, anyone that's joined on. Great to have you here, and already some great tones set in this event. So welcome and be settled. So I'm going to pass you across to Howard Gunstock. I'd love to do a really elaborate introduction on him, but actually that would just detract from him. All I'll say is that there are a few people that will come to you with such an inspiring message that will give you not just a sense of hope, but a sense of, how can I find meaning? How can I lend a hand? And how can I hear more? So without wanting to big you up too much, Howard, you must be bigged up because what you do is incredible. And the concept of planetary service is never greater than when I think about what you do. So Over to you, sir, and thanks for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me as your first guest. Don't feel too much of the pressure at all. So yeah, I've pulled together a few slides. I hope they're really interesting for you guys. I'll talk to you a little bit about my journey into consciousness. A few years ago, I had what you would classify as a number of life moments. I had some issues with where I was working, so I had to deal with some very difficult people. At the same time, I had a lot of things that were going wrong in my private life and my personal life. Unfortunately, my father started to show signs of dementia and unfortunately passed away. When that happened, I found I was being more responsible. I think what really struck me was that when that moment happened, I started to notice some changes in my perception. Someone called it post-traumatic growth, and that really resonated with me, because I started to see things in a way that I hadn't been seeing them before. At the time, Greta Thunberg was banging her drum regarding climate change and that we had been destroying our planet, and I took an inward look in myself and decided that she was right, and I wanted to do something about it, and I wanted to take some rapid action. In my life before my consciousness, I was a business problem solver focused in corporate strategy, learning, development, and HR. And I sort of ended up going to a few Friends of the Earth meetings, some Extinction Rebellion meetings, and I found the wonders of kelp. And I'll try and concisely regale you about some of it as we go along, I guess. But really, I think it's probably easiest to describe it in sort of some pictorial format. So I'll try to go through with that. I created a company called Carbon Capture. It wasn't on my own. My business partner, Dave, unfortunately can't be here. He sort of helped me, and he told me about this great idea he had about creating large-scale offshore seaweed farms, and the idea that these seaweed farms could absorb vast amounts of CO2. And in my moment of reflection, I realized that actually there must be, if this seaweed can absorb CO2, there really must be a market, someone that would want to buy and pay for that, because actually what that was doing was letting our planet heal. And it was something that was quite remarkable. Putting a value on the regenerative power of nature seemed to me like the smartest thing to do, because we've been investing a lot of money in consumerism and retail therapy and extracting vast amounts of minerals out of our planet. I wanted to show you this because this is really sort of start of the crux of it. Before I talk to you about anything else to do with carbon capture, you can see my screen, right, Nathan? I've got this one.
Yeah, right. We can, and I love this slide.
Thank heavens for that. Okay, so this actually is planet Earth by landmass. This is all the land that we have on planet Earth. We have a blue planet, not a land-based planet. 70% of our planet is water, which means 30% of it is land. On that land, there are 8 billion people, 8 billion cattle, hundreds of thousands of cities, millions and millions of miles of infrastructure. And in between, we have been sort of got this sustained inattentional blindness into thinking that we can plant trees and reverse 120, 130 years worth of global damage, and I can really give you statistics that counteract that. So this little square over here, this one here, this is the United States of America. It represents 1.87% of the land mass of our planet. If we were able to plant trees, and I'll talk to you about the type of trees in a minute, but let's just say that they were mature trees that were able to absorb CO2. If we were able to put trees in every available space in America, so that's every front yard, every backyard, every farmyard, every area of crop that you can have a crop, we would be able to plant 1.7 trillion trees. Ignore the ability to be able to plant it, the volume alone. Right? Those trees would only be able to absorb 10% of the CO2 that we produced this year, 2021. This is Australia. Where is Australia? Just here. It is only 1.51% of the land mass of our planet. Now, again, assuming that some of this stuff is theoretically possible. If the landmass of Australia was actually seaweed farms, we would be able to extract in a matter of years 2, 3, or 4, depending on the type of seaweed, the water temperature, the tides that were available. So there are some variables in there, but we would be able to extract the CO2 damage from the 20th century. Why are we still having this conversation on climate change facing on trees? And then just to reinforce this conversation, I want to tell you what you're doing when you actually plant trees, all right? So making a massive assumption that I go to Ecology or whatever tree planting website that exists. This is what I buy for about £1.50. I'm buying a little tiny sapling of a tree. Trees are like babies. They don't actually become useful until they're like 30 or 40 years old. This is what a 30 or a 40, the middle one, is what a 30 or 40-year-old tree looks like. You could probably hug around a 30 or 40-year-old tree, probably. And they become really, really useful when they're about 60, 70 or 80. So there's hope for me yet. But the reason why trees really aren't the answer, aside from the 30%, is because we only have 10 years to save our biodiversity. That's what the United Nations say. It's actually a bit less than that now. It's probably between 8 and 9 years. So to use trees is pretty pointless. So this is what I created. So I'll talk to you about carbon capture. I mean, I can't believe that we are actually having to find ways to sustain human existence on our planet and our life. But that is the facts that we are facing right now. There are lots of solutions around: carbon capture, storage, tree planting, various other bits and pieces. But again, the truth is they're very expensive, or they're not that effective, and they certainly don't work fast enough. So this is what we are. We're a group of environmentalists and problem solvers. And our mission is very simple. We want to regenerate our oceans and fight climate change. The oceans are the fastest regenerative area of our planet that we have. And what we can do is we can remove CO2 by growing seaweed or kelp at scale, anywhere where the water is cold enough and the nutrients are rich enough. And let's be clear, as our planet heats up and our oceans heat up, the water becomes less cold, obviously, and the nutrients become less abundant. So this is something we have to do right now. But moving that forward, what we will then do is we will then take the seaweed out of the water and create carbon negative products and services. Now, I'm not saying that process is perfect right now. It's a bit like trying to move water in a wheelbarrow. Some of it will go over the side, but we will move more from this direction into this direction than if we don't. And the reason why is that seaweed and certain types of seaweed can grow 30 times faster than trees. Now, if you can take that fast photosynthesis process and turn that into a practical, branded, carbon negative product and service, you can do planetary good very, very quickly. And this is why it's so amazing. So it's about opportunity cost. Year on year, you can grow seaweed pretty much to grow CO2, absorb CO2 in a linear process. The opportunity cost of that tree growing to full maturity, that's 10 years. This is the lost opportunity cost of CO2 just by focusing on trees. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to see the carbon impact now or in 10 or 20 years time? Probably longer. But you know, if you're I had this conversation with someone who's a meat eater the other day, and I don't have any problem with people who eat meat. You know, it took me a little while to become mainly vegetarian and vegan, but they were telling me about they had spaghetti bolognese that used 500 grams worth of minced meat. And I said, to get that onto your plate, you'd have needed to plant 50 trees 10 years ago. And people just can't compute that. So this is where carbon capture are today. So we have just got our first European hub in a place called Mulroy Bay, which is a beautiful area of Ireland. As you can see from this map, it's very close to the actual coast. So the coast itself of Mulroy Bay is around about here. It's an inlet bay, so when the water comes in, it comes into this secluded bay here, and the nutrients stay there. We have we've just taken 10 hectares, but we have up to 350 hectares. And what we want to be able to do now is fully test out our business model, and we're going to be having our base for carbon capture in this location. So I'm pretty excited. We have the ability to scale up very, very quickly. The farmer who looks after this area, he's been working this area of water for 30 years. And all he wants to do is he wants to have a multi-trophic solution. So we're really excited to help facilitate that. He's been growing shellfish for ages, but he can grow bigger, better shellfish by using seaweed as a way to help purify the water and extract minerals and CO2 to make his plants, his shellfish grow faster. And I'm going to show you what we're trying to do. As a result of having our farms in the water, we can now participate, or we will be able to participate in the following activities. So the first activity we need to do, and this is this is probably a state of the fact that the company is just a few directors. I'm the full-time worker, and everyone else pretty much, all our other kelpers work pretty much part-time. And we have about 28 kelpers that work on a voluntary and part-time basis. But we need to update our website, and we'll be doing that very, very shortly because there are a number of really big key activities we're doing. As a consequence of having those farms, we will be able to sell a corporate sponsorship package to large multinational organizations, or just large organizations that want to show that they're really doing planetary good. And so for £50,000, we'll be able to sequester between 10 to 15 tons of CO2 equivalent per hectare per year for the lifetime of the ropes. So the £50,000 essentially helps us get the ropes, buoys and anchors into the water as quickly as possible. We anticipate the ropes lasting, because we're going to be getting good rope, around about 6 years, but that's going to depend on water current, temperature, type of biology that ends up being in Mulroy Bay for that period of time. We're also going to be creating artificial reef anchors. So buckle in, I'm just about to go onto a biology fast forward track process. So the first stage of seaweed farming, when we put the farms in the water, that's essentially geoengineering our waters. That's brilliant. That's something we definitely want to do. The second stage is dealing with invasive species of seaweed. So when there is, because when we farm our land, we are nutrient poor. So what we do is we spray our crops with pesticides and artificial stimulants, and the nutrients from the land gets run off into rivers and into waterways. These cause algae blooms or invasive species of seaweed. These algae blooms completely cover waterways, and they destroy the ecology beforehand. Underneath. What we're intending to do is collect these algae blooms, which are full of nutrients, which aren't necessarily good for human consumption, and also full of carbon dioxide and CO2 and carbon. And we're going to turn this into biochar, which is essentially the biomass when the water is taken out, and then it's a concentrated charcoal type process. We go through something called pyrolysis, and then that is a sequestered, a green carbon credit. We can then get that biochar and put it either into concrete or into mixed glass, which is then a part of a circular economy, and then sequester that into the water. What's really amazing is that if your company wants to sponsor one of these artificial reefs, we have the largest 3D printer in the country at the Arts Institute Bournemouth, and we can put your company logo on that artificial reef. You'll be able to see it from Google Maps from space. We're working with the Arts Institute Bournemouth, Bournemouth University, Portsmouth University, and the council in Bournemouth and Poole County Council and Dorset County Council to collect all these algae blooms to be able to do this process. We hope to be able to have a copy-paste effect for every coastal county council or that's a tongue twister, for every coastal council in the country. That was not in the script when I did it earlier today. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm quite proud of that one. Okay, so the other things that we're doing is this. We are speaking later on in October. I'm speaking with an organization called the Zero Carbon Forum. Nathan, I remembered I got to stop sharing and go back. So the Zero Carbon, there are lots of companies and organizations that sound like this, but the Zero Carbon Forum are these guys. They represent every major food retailer on the high street in the UK. And I'm speaking to them about how they should spend their sustainability budget on anything except for trees. That's really cool. So this is as a way to sort of gain them to have buy-in towards the idea of our sponsorship model. And finally, I've been fortunate enough to have to speak at a number of events in and around COP26. Not the main events, which is a real shame, but I don't really particularly want to be speaking with some of the people that are there, and I probably will say something really bad to some people whose behaviours have been terrible. But I'm speaking at a major aquaculture and agriculture and climate change conference, which is literally the other side of the water from the main COP26 event. That purpose of that exercise is to gain major capital investment for carbon cap. So that pretty much covers what we're doing. Dominique and Esther and Nathan told me to to tell you guys about a little call to action. I'm a little bit hesitant about it, but we've got a mini goal that are coming up. We're trying to raise around about £40,000 to pay for the rope, buoys and anchors in Mulroy Bay. Now, if you are a conscious individual, maybe you could be a conscious kelper and help us out. I don't know if you happen to want to be able to help out our cause, that would be amazing. Or if you might know a decision maker that could help us with sponsorship or getting some income to be able to get these ropes, buoys and anchors. But you can go onto the Carbon Capture website, which I'll show you in a second. And if you go to our products and services, you'll be able to find a donation button at the bottom there. We would be massively grateful for any support that you might be able to help us out with at all. Having said that, if that's not something that you could do, literally following us on any of our social media platforms, which I'll also show you, would be absolutely incredible. We've grown to we're a tiny organization, but we have like over 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. We have hundreds and hundreds of followers on Facebook, and we're gaining a growing reputation on Instagram and on Twitter as well. People who follow us have a little handle on their LinkedIn network that says Associate Kelper. It's just to start a conversation, because if you're interested in helping us create this incredible business model and put a higher value on the regenerative power of nature and saving our oceans, I'd be you'd be doing us a massive favor. So these are my contact details. You can find us on any of these platforms. If you want to have a conversation with me directly, please feel free to reach out. I'd be delighted to. Yeah. How was that?
Amazing.
Is that okay?
Very, very good, Howard. That's really, really great. So I want to pivot into questions, but Ashok already has a question for you. So Ashok, would you like to unmute and ask him personally?
Hi.
This is wonderful, actually. What I'm wondering about is if you could give us some brief or idea as to the end products and their marketability and their competitiveness in the present market situation.
The first products that we'll be creating is biochar and/or graphene. It's pretty much the same thing. And we'll also be creating the biocrete reef anchors. So we'll be taking the seaweed or biochar and sequestering it into another compound like concrete or mixed glass to sequester it into the water. You could also be using the biocrete or kelpcrete to build houses, use it, recycle. Yeah, it's a fantastic thing. We're working with the universities to make sure the footprint is as small as possible and the CO2 impact is as small as possible. Because as a species, we're not going to stop building stuff, but that will come from when we get the volumes. And right now, to be able to do that at scale, we don't have the income to do that, which is why we're leveraging and trying to have conversations with as many decision makers as possible to make that happen. As we grow, that will change. It's one of the reasons why we're going to COP26 to gain major capital investment if we can do. I have got a number of organizations globally that we can work with when we get income and investment to be able to speed up the growth of the organization rapidly. I just got off a Zoom call with an incredible lady in Singapore who represents 91 fish farmers who haven't been able to do fishing 5 years because their water is so polluted with algae blooms. So we have so much, but right now, you can only go for what you're going for. And what we're going for right now is making sure we have an impact in an actual business model that works. We have further products down the line as well, just to answer the last part of your question, Ashok. We are looking at not food things for human consumption. That's not a way of sequestering the CO2, but we are looking at compost, soil improver, animal feed and fertilizer as the lower hanging fruit. Anything with as lower form of processing as possible, where we can repurpose the nutrients from the ocean and help us with the land-based solutions are what we're after, because we are nutrient poor on land. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Otherwise, Anatoly, if you'd like to ask.
Sorry, it's a bit of a mess here, like a bit of a zoo around me. That's why I just had to keep it down. People
Okay.
practicing, singing, dancing, whatever. So, hey, I just had a question for you, because you did make a very good point about reaching out to companies and actually helping them nicely to spend their sustainability budgets on something that you can offer them. By the way, this is of great interest to me, because usually when you talk to companies, they really talk about things in very abstract terms in terms of how they're going to spend money, what they're interested in, how they want to go to Mars rather than spending money on this planet, So are you getting any luck to actually show them exactly what you're doing? Because you've got something that's very measurable, appealing, easy to sell, and should be easy to recruit them to help your cause.
The long and short of it, the truth is, the company itself is 12 months old, right? So to be able to get to some of those organizations has been about networking our brand. So we're getting there. I'm having some great conversations. As I showed you, I'm speaking with this Zero Carbon Forum, who represents every major food retailer on the UK and Ireland high streets. I believe they will be able to, the money that they've got in their pockets is very significant. But I don't want to rely on that lead coming through. Putting all your eggs in one basket is definitely a lesson I learned a long time ago. So I'm trying to make sure that I network and find as many different avenues to be able to do that. We have got a number of smaller businesses that are interested in doing it, but we need to get the larger amounts of money in first to be able to scale our business, because we just don't have enough time to save our planet unless we do activities on a large scale.
I think it opens up a great opportunity for anyone here that can see an avenue that can help out, or can know someone that could help out, or has some interaction with an organization that would be interested in investing money to offset their carbon footprint, as an example, or anything along these lines. This is what it's all about. So you can reach out to him directly through the details that he shared, and we'll share afterwards again. But as we're learning here, what I love most about this is that nature has an answer. We kind of stumbled across it. And Howard, in your very small, very young operation that I know has taken every ounce of blood that you have, with the prevailing wind and a strong presence upstairs, you're gaining some great ground. And to be talking at COP26, after such humble beginnings, I think it's an enormous thing. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where this is going.
Thank you.
Hi, Howard. That was a great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I just wanted to know about when you say like 10 hectares of kelp for currently, and how do you think they would be collected back if it's a larger scale?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the first part of the question. I'm really sorry.
You said like while starting it, you're planning to have like 10 hectares of kelp, and maybe future could go to like 300 or 400 hectares. So when this happens, how is the kelp collected back?
It's not in the sea, so it grows on ropes. That inlet bay at Mulroy Bay, we've taken 10 hectares, but there's up to 350 that the license holder has that we can use. And you go along with a little boat. It is literally harvested off the rope and collected on the boat and taken back to shore. Beautiful thing about the location that we have is that the processing is only half a kilometer away from the bay itself, so it's got a tiny footprint all by itself.
Okay, yeah, that was my thing, because when you need to collect it from a longer region, it's like it has like a problem shifting from the boats and things like that.
Yeah, when we go off, we've got an offshore solution that we're looking at, and one of the ways that we can reduce the amount of footprint that we have, and also reduce manpower hours and risk, because when you're going into the open ocean, you're taking a lot more risk. Is that we've got 5G drones that are being offered to us to be able to monitor the growth rate, so we'll understand about marine mammal entanglement, be able to understand what the net weight of the seaweed is and its location. If any of the farms have drifted, etc. It's really quite incredible. But that in itself is 2 or 3 years down the track. There's enough coastal locations for seaweed around Europe and around the world for us to be able to have a significant impact to be able to reduce some of the nutrients and runoff over the next 2 or 3 years. And in that time, we'll be able to nuance and finesse our offshore solutions in a much more succinct way. So I don't need to rush into going into offshore just now.
Yeah. And how does this help the kelp farmers? Is there certain program or something that you do particularly, or?
So kelp farmers are typically only operate at typically on very small scale. So we need to either gain a bigger network of kelp farmers collectively, so we can do that, or we need to be able to gain license. And typically they won't just be farming kelp; they'll be doing shellfish and seaweed, because the seaweed cycle in most of the northern European locations has a 6-month growth spell. In Southeast Asia, it can grow in a matter of months. So what we're doing is we're providing them with remuneration outside of the farming cycle. At the moment, seaweed isn't a high value product, which is the most incredible thing or most incredible fact. So now what we've done is we've got a commercial offering to businesses that takes it from being a low cost, low entry, low profit margin solution to being something that has a much higher value by using its natural resources. So I used to work in supply chain many years ago, and what we'd say is it's about stripping the asset. I know it's a very corporate term, but it's essentially getting as much out of the leaf as you can do. And if it's got CO2 and it's captured carbon, well, that's definitely not something anyone's selling at that moment. What we've done is just found a way to monetize that and get that higher value. And if we get some of that higher value, or when we get some of that higher value, if you're a third party working with carbon capture, well, we'll be able to give you some of that money back, obviously, to be able to do that. So we've got a model to be able to make sure that people who are right on the edge of climate change are no longer reliant on the lower value sort of income streams.
Other questions?
The way it works then is through photosynthesis. So when the plant grows, it is using photosynthesis to convert carbon into the fibrous material. Same way as wood and trees go.
Same way as humans.
Well, you would food, yeah. So, but humans are not very good at getting rid of carbon dioxide.
No.
The thing is once it's in the kind of fibrous form, the carbon is trapped in it. As soon as you start releasing that, as soon as you pull it out the ground and start doing other things with it, surely you've kind of lost that ability. Wouldn't it be better to just let them grow and grow and grow? I don't understand your logic of doing that.
So you don't lose it straight away. It's a bit like seaweed is in its form is a bit like a potato in the ground, but just seaweed in the water. When you take the potato out the ground, it still holds its CO2. You will lose some of it when you cut the root off, for sure, a little bit of it. But do you remember me explaining to you about it's a bit like water in a wheelbarrow? You're going to lose some of it over the sides. Yeah. You're going to lose some of it. But if you can take that process, take that seaweed in its physical form and use less energy in transforming it into, for example, let's just use the biochar as a great example. So to get the energy to create biochar, we're going to be using renewable energy from a renewable energy firm. So all we're doing is we're drying it out. We'll then use the pyrolysis system to make it into a biochar, and there'll be some gases which will feed into the national grid, which we can be able to get income from as well. And
but
then,
the pyrolysis is just heat without oxygen. It's like a different form of burning. But as soon as you start doing that, you're releasing the carbon dioxide from it.
No, because you've managed to keep most of the gases, most of the carbon in its physical form. It's a carbon. You'll lose some of it. I'm not saying that you won't. You'll lose a percentage. And we have doctors and scientists, and there's lots of really good scientific insight that gives us lots of measures along a large scale. But the vast majority of information says we'll store more of it than would have been in the water in the first place.
I can see how the kelp farms on the seabed is a terrific idea. I struggle with this next step, but yeah, great.
Cool.
Yes, I've got a question. Hi, Howard. So as you were speaking, great presentation. It gave me some food for thought. Thank you. One of the things I was wondering is that there are obviously many different types of seaweed. And I know it's built into the name that it's in the sea, but can you grow seaweed inland in other places?
Yeah, so you can. There's a few organizations that are doing it. So I'm having a conversation with Dubai at the moment because they can't grow seaweed in their waters because it's too hot. And Israel also currently have a number of solutions where they grow seaweed in tanks. Get the nutrients from the sea, pump it in to these tanks, cool the tanks down and grow the seaweed. And you can do it inland. I can't find a way to make that model work effectively, cost effectively. I can't. So it can be done. And there are certain types of seaweeds that will grow better in tanks due to the nutrients that will be put in there and the right sort of mix of water temperatures, etc. That's not where we want to be going right now, because one, we don't have the capability, and two, we don't have the finance, and three, we don't have the capacity to be able to do that. It's about making sure we are using the seaweed for the betterment of human development rather than the detriment of ecology and ecosystems. And the key thing is, where seaweed grows, marine life flourishes. So I can literally put a seaweed farm in a location. In the UK, we have these things called garden cities. They're like cities in between major towns and cities. That's what the seaweed farms are effectively. They will be a way to help marine life very rapidly transform in their locations.
Because what I'm thinking about is possibly some sort of aquaponic solution that's inland. So if you've got the fish creating some sort of nutrient for the plant, for the seaweed, and then that's capturing the CO2. I mean, I'm thinking beyond just your business. If this has got such a rapid absorption of CO2, then how else could we build or bring in, and that's kind of where I'm trying to think.
It's a great question, and one I don't necessarily have the answer for right now, if I'm honest, David. So we have got a version of that in Mulroy Bay, which is an inlet, but our inlet bay. Whether that's possible on land, I think that's probably a conversation for me and the strategy team here. But being able to also monetize it very quickly is the issue. So how do we turn it from one thing into a monetized thing, into a monetized solution? Because of the timelines we have, it makes it very hard. So we're working for everything.
Yeah, so Arthur is asking, in regions where you have kelp farms, will there be a local processing opportunity?
Yes, 100%.
Okay,
there's no point shipping it across the world.
All right. I wanted to also ask you, Howard, is there an individual sponsorship, and is there any ROI on it as well?
We're looking for some investment at the moment. So if people can, so we're asking for if you can donate, that'd be wonderful, and we'd be very, very grateful. But for individual investments at the moment, we are looking at a short-term 1-year loan for minimum investments of £5,000. We can give up to 20% in that 12-month period, depending on how long we keep that money for. This is the clock that we have until we've used up of our budget for the 1.5% that we have set out in the Paris Accord. Pretty much in year 9, life will die out. So you'll be, in the last 2 years, there won't be very much for people to live on. It'll be a very, very bleak world we're looking at. Thanks for that, Nathan. Yeah. It's shocking.
No problem. Wonderful. Right.
You shocked us for the rest of the day.
I know. Sometimes striking messages are best.
I think there was another question, actually, Nathan, from Ashok regarding getting corporate social responsibility champions and heads on LinkedIn to get involved with this. So the question to Howard was, have you looked at that?
Yeah, my sales team, I've been very fortunate enough to have a fantastic sales team that are going to be working with us, and that's pretty much what they're going to be, their job to do, is to find CSR directors, etc. And those I've developed a really big network on LinkedIn. So when I need to be able to ask for people, but it's a really good idea, Ashok. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
And just mindful of time, if I may, I know there's another question there from Arthur. What I'd say is that, please reach out to Howard. He's very prevalent. Howard, do you want to just share that last slide you have with your contact information? Because clearly this is a subject that's striking well. That would be awesome. So feel free to connect with him. Become a Kelper, as he streaked.
Associate Kelpers are always welcome. Help. Why can't I help my kelp? There we go. So you can find me at howardg@carboncapture.org, capture with a K. If you are able to make any sort of contribution, I'm extremely grateful. You'll find the donate button somewhere on our carboncapture.org website under products and services. You can find me on any of the social medias. I am most prevalent on LinkedIn. I have quite a good following over there, and I'm grateful for any questions and support that anyone can have towards our organization. I genuinely thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today. Thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Howard. Very good. All right, everyone. Well, we're literally at the top of the hour. From behalf of the team here, we just want to say a great thank you for coming and investing your time in us. We will be sending out a survey link if you've not already received it. The opportunity to share back with us what's worked, what hasn't worked, ideas for the future. If you have a story that you also want to be able to bring forwards and have it heard, have your mission heard, and have people help you, please do. That's the whole point of this. Let's raise consciousness together and make an impression in the world, and that's the ultimate goal for us all here. So thank you all. We wish you well. On behalf of everyone, wish you a very pleasant rest of the day.